Okay, sports fans, time for another installment of Crazy Photosynthesis Reactions. Today we're going to look at the light independent reaction, otherwise known as the Calvin cycle. Now the reason they call it the light independent reaction, it doesn't require light. But doesn't everything need energy? Well, yeah. So where does the energy for this come from? Well, it comes from the light-dependent reaction. So let's see if we can review a little bit, okay? So here's our edge of our thylakoid. Remember the thylakoid? Thylakoid. Inside here we have the lumen. Outside here we have the stroma. All this is the stroma. That's that fluid around the lumen. Around the thylakoid. Okay. During the light-dependent reaction, we went through a whole bunch of crazy stuff. If you don't remember it, go see the other video. But basically, what we ended up with was ATP. Yay. And we ended up with NADPH. Crowd goes wild for NADPH. Okay, both of these, let's draw this. Both of these are the energy source for the Calvin cycle. Ta-da! Okay, so if you do not understand how we have ATP and NADPH, then you're watching the wrong video. Go watch the one on light-dependent reaction. Okay? If you do understand how we got ATP and NADPH, you're in the right place. Okay, so let's just move on and see what we got. Okay, so I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way, and I'm going to start showing you what really happens. Everything that happens here happens out here in the stroma. So the Calvin cycle happens in the stroma. The light-dependent reaction happens in the thylakoid membrane in the lumen, but the Calvin cycle happens in the stroma. Calvin cycle, stroma. Calvin cycle, stroma. Light-dependent reaction, thylakoid. Light-dependent reaction, thylakoid. Calvin cycle? Nope. Stroma. There you go. Okay. So, moving some of this away. Let's see. The real big players in here are, of course, the ATP, and NADPH. They're the energy source for the Calvin cycle. Bye. But there's another player, and it's carbon dioxide. Okay? Everybody remembers our friend carbon dioxide. So really, I'm going to leave that right there so we know it's in the stroma. So really, these are the three things that are required to make this work. Carbon dioxide, ATP, NADPH. Okay, just for a little review, let's see, let me put that up. Well, yeah, I'll take this off. For a little review, this is carbon dioxide, okay? It's a carbon molecule, or atom, carbon atom, bonded, that's what those lines mean, to an oxygen and an oxygen. Pretty basic, right? This is what's in the air. Now this starts as a gas, okay? It's a gas, and it changes to a solid. How cool is that? Yeah, through this process, this gas turns to a solid. The solid is sugar, but it starts as a gas to solid. I know, it's amazing, it's awesome. Okay, the process is called carbon fixation. There it is. Okay, that's really what we're going to be working with. So Calvin cycle is kind of a carbon fixation process. Okay, so what are we doing? All right, well, let's start with carbon dioxide. Let's put it right here. Now let's get rid of this guy so you can see stuff. Let's get rid of that guy so you can see stuff. Let's see if we can do this. The first thing specifically, 6 carbon dioxides. Okay. We have 6 of them. And if you remember from our photosynthesis equation, we had 6 carbon dioxides to start with. The 6 carbon dioxides basically get bonded together with this really crazy, are you ready for this? This really crazy molecule called RUBP. Rub. 6 of the RUBPs. Now, I know people like I just blanked. I don't know. I know people out there are going to want to know what RUP stands for. There it is. Ribulose biphosphate. Okay? Ribulose biphosphate. No, You do not have to know ribulose biphosphate, but you do need to know RUBP, and specifically you need to know this. This is the chemical symbol for RUBP, for for ribulose biphosphate. I'm confused. Ribulose biphosphate. Okay. Carbon dioxide is added to this. Okay. Now let me show you what this would look like as a molecule. Like this. Let's make it bigger. I'm not going to leave it up here, but just so you can see. What I want to point out to you are these carbons. See how there's 5 carbons right here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which means I showed you the wrong one. Look at that. How much of an idiot can I be? All right, let's find you the right one. Oh, here it is. Yay. Wow. Okay, there we go. 5 carbons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's this crazy guy? That's a phosphate that we always talk about. The orange is phosphorus, red is oxygen, 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 oxygen. The white is hydrogen, just for those of you that need to know. So, orange, phosphorus, red, oxygen. That's a phosphate group, just like what's in ATP, just like what's in a phospholipid bilayer. That's a phosphate. Phosphate. So you have a phosphate, you have carbon, 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 phosphate. Phosphate, carbon, 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 phosphate. Cool? Awesome. All right, say goodbye to this guy. Goodbye to this guy. Goodbye. Thanks for sharing with me. All right, so here's this. Okay. So here's what happens, sports fans. It's going to get a little crazy. When these two combine, it actually kind of breaks them apart. This and this get broken apart and recombined. So let me kind of draw an arrow. Does like that, and it makes this really crazy molecule, makes 12 of them. P-gal. P what? P-gal. It has 3 carbons, 1, a 2, a 3, and a phosphate. Okay, 12 of those bad boys. Okay, you hurting? Is your mind hurting? Well, wait till you see the name of this sucker. The reason we call it P-gal is this is the real name. Phosphoglyceraldehyde. Say that 6 times a minute. Go ahead, I'll wait. Phosphoglyceraldehyde, 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 phosphoglyceraldehyde. There you go. All right. Anyway, you don't have to know that word either. You just need to know P-gal. I'm not even sure you really need to know that, but let's go with it. So 12 P-gals. CCCP. You're like, do you have a model for that? I do. There it is. Love it. Good. Bye. All right. So, all right, really look. 1 carbon, 2 carbon, 3 carbon. Here's that phosphate group we talked about earlier. Here's all the other stuff. You don't care. All right. So, moving on. Here's the deal. This is important. To turn these two, to combine these two into this, we need energy. This might be where our ADP and ATP come from. ATP gets turned into ATP. Okay, remember that's how the energy works. The phosphate on here is broken off, leaving us with ADP and a phosphate. So our ATPs are turned into ADPs plus phosphate there. That's where half the energy comes from. The other half of the energy comes from, that's right, NADPH being turned back into NADP and hydrogen. Yep, you guys are remembering. You're digging it. You're down with it. Okay. All right, so this cannot happen unless it has the energy from these two things. And that energy comes from the bonds being broken between the phosphate and the ADP, or the adenosine. And it can't happen without the hydrogen being broken off there and that energy being released. That's where the energy comes from to turn these two things into this. Now, hopefully that makes sense. That's about the hardest part, I think. But let me show you a couple things. Number one, if you count the carbons here, you'll see that this matches up. Remember all counting the carbons trick? So we got 6, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Times that by 6, what's that give you? Anybody? Anybody? That's right, 30. Okay. Plus, how many carbons we got here? 6 carbons. 6. What's that equal? 36. Oh my God, my mind is numb. That's what you're thinking. I know. Bear with me. Now, Let's go down here and look. We got 1, a 2, a 3. Okay, times 12. What's 12 times 36? 12 times 36 equals... No, it's stupid. Oh my gosh. 12 times 3. Okay, 12 times 3. That's right, equals, you guessed it, 36. Alright, I'm a moron. Laugh at the fat kid. Alright, here we go. So 36 and 36, that tells you that this does equal this. Okay? You also got the 12 phosphates here. See, 12 times 1 is 12. Here you've got 1, 2 times 6 is 12. You know that's all the same. Okay? Does that help? I hope. Now you're like, man, I'm a chemistry stud. Alright, so let's get these out of the way now that I've proven to you all this great stuff. Alright. So here we are. We're stuck with 12 p-gals. Big flip. Well, let me tell you why it's a big flip. Here's what happens. For the most part, these just cycle around. Okay, remember it's called a cycle, right? And a cycle, you know what? Let me draw it better. A cycle kind of says, hey, this thing goes full circle. Well, in this case, it's true also. So this 12 p-gals goes up here, and it is going to actually, 10 of these are going to stay p-gals for a little while. Okay, so 10 of these, let's see if I can fix this. Sorry. 10 of these are going to be right here as that. Look at that, magic. Yeah. All right, so 10 p-gals. 10, 12, that's not the same number. What happens? Here's what happens. 2 of these bad boys split off. That's right. 2 of those p-gals split off. So who cares about that? Well, let me tell you. The reason you should care is that these 2 p-gals that split off, they become the glucose. If you look, the p-gal, remember, is CCCP. There's 3 carbons. What's 3 times 2? 6 carbons. That's right. It becomes glucose, which is what I showed you earlier. See, glucose, hello, look at me. 1, 2, 3, there's one of the p-gals. 1, 2, 3, there's the other p-gal. Okay? Now, the phosphate's broken off during that process. Hydrogens and oxygens are added, but basically, that's the deal, is you've got this p-gal business. Okay, so these 2 p-gals become carbon dioxide. And I'm going to come right back to this because I want to make sure you get this. But I want you to see something right here. Okay, what happens here is these p-gals are changed back into 6 RUBP molecules. Okay, 6 of these 2-phosphate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons. And this process takes more ATP. So we have to have our ATP that is turned into, remember our ATP is turned into ADP plus phosphate right there, right? And that process releases energy, and that energy turns this back into this. Again, let's count our carbons real quick. We got 3 carbons in each one, right? So 3 times 10 is 30. Got it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times 10, or 5 times 6, I'm sorry, is 30. Our carbons are the same. Phosphates, 1 phosphate times 10 is 10. 1, 2 times 6 is 12. So why am I an idiot? 10. Hang on. Well, what I was trying to figure out is when I started to count these phosphates, thanks for waiting, by the way, there was more here than there should have been, because 10 times this phosphate is 10, but yet these 2 times 6 is 12. Where does the extra one come from? Right there. Thanks to Google, I found out that phosphates from ATP being split, this grabs that phosphate and adds it to here, and that's where we get that extra phosphate. How cool is that? That's so cool. I love it when stuff works. Okay, so this is kind of what happens. So see, it's a cycle. Then once it's here, it goes again. It mixes with this stuff, and it splits to this, and then back around and back around and back around. That's why they call it a cycle. Makes sense? I know, it's cool. All right, almost done. Much simpler than the other one, I know. Here's the deal. This p-gal, What's up with that? Well, it can make glucose. Okay, it absolutely can. But it can make a lot of other things too. So let me ask you a riddle. This is a very common riddle. If you take an acorn, okay, here's your acorn, and over time that acorn becomes this great big tree, which is so much bigger than that acorn, right? So much bigger. It's huge, right? Take it, tree's gigantic. Where did all the mass from this tree come from that little acorn? Big tree, little acorn, big tree, little acorn. Where did all that come from? Okay, that's the million-dollar question. Here's where it came from. It's this carbon dioxide, guys. This carbon dioxide, remember I said it during carbon fixation it turns from a gas to a solid? Yeah, that solid can be glucose right here. This pGal can turn into glucose, okay? But it also can turn into lipids, which is fat. It can turn into amino acids, which lead to proteins. It can lead to starch, which can make cellulose for cell walls. It can turn into all these different parts of a cell and build up big and strong. That is the magic of pGal. It can become a lot of things depending on which chemical pathway it goes. There for glucose, there for lipids, there for amino acids, there for starch. And even glucose. It can be different sugars. It can be glucose, it can be fructose, it can be sucrose, it can be lactose. It can be all these different things. All of that comes from pGal. Okay? This is the key to all the building blocks in our body. And this is the key. Photosynthesis. I know you learned that photosynthesis was all about glucose being made from carbon dioxide and water. And that's true, but it's not the only truth. You could also say photosynthesis makes lipids by taking carbon dioxide and water. And you could say that photosynthesis makes proteins by taking carbon dioxide and water. And there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, it's more complicated than I'm painting it, but what I want you to understand is this pGal becomes all of our bodies, and all the tree, and all the bacteria, and all that stuff is born out of this pGal and the chemicals, the elements and the atoms that it brings along. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, take-home message. The point of this is to make these pGals, which makes our glucose and our sucrose and our lipids and whatever. That's the point of this, okay? Starts carbon dioxide, mixes with the RUBP, that makes a 6-carbon bad boy here that's via the energy from these guys is broken down into these pGals. 2 of these pGals become whatever we need it to be. The rest are turned back into RUBP with the help of ATP, breaking apart the ADP and phosphate. And as a matter of fact, 2 of those phosphates, when 2 of these ATPs are broken apart, have to be used to remake our 6 RUBP, so we're ready to go again. Okay. That is the Calvin cycle. So now, of course, as the customary, write down questions. Do you have questions? Write them down. I'll wait. Are you done? All right. I just want to say, sometimes you feel like a nut. Sometimes you don't. Peace out, sports fans.